So today we're joined by award-winning UK music photographer Andy Ford. Now, some of Andy's projects include shooting for music magazines such as Kerrang and NME, and even directly for record labels such as Universal and Sony. He's an alumnus of Plymouth College of Art, and he's worked with artists including, ready for it, Mark Ronson, Biffy Clyro, Dua Lipa and Beyoncé, to name a few. And today he's here with us to share some cool insights into what it's like to work as a professional music photographer. He'll be sharing his visual journey from early days as a student, shooting small local shows, to working with some of the biggest artists. I can't wait to get started. Andy, welcome to Learn Lounge.
Hello there.
How are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad. Nice rainy Bristol day. It's all good.
The sun is starting to peek out through the clouds now, so hopefully that will change. Sure. So we're going to hear all about your career today, something that's really exciting that maybe a lot of people are interested to know the certain steps to get to where you are, because it's not the kind of career that you see a clear path laid out. So let's start with what you actually do. So tell us a bit about what you do as a music photographer. It's time to spill the beans.
Right. So as we've discussed, I'm Andy Ford. I'm a professional photographer. I have been for the last 8 years, and obviously I'm mainly known for my work within music. So that means I get to spend a lot of time in an office that generally looks like the slide you can see there. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown on the different types of shoots I generally do, and the types of clients that amazingly pay me to do them. So as we said, a lot of my work is editorial, which means it's generally for magazines and websites. See a selection of some of the things there. That might be live reviews, so shooting concert images to go with them. Might be festival coverage, or it can be portraits to go with magazine features. And sometimes you're lucky enough to shoot the front cover, which is always exciting, if a little bit nerve-wracking. So yeah, I get to travel quite a lot as part of my job. Sometimes that can be flying out with a band as part of a tour. It might be on a magazine commission. This one was from last summer with a crazy German metal band called Rammstein. I went out there to do a Kerrang feature with them out in Berlin, and they gave me this amazing access into the middle of their pyro show, and I managed to get some great shots and escape with both my eyebrows still attached. So yeah, often it might be sort of working directly for the people putting on event or the venue. This one here was from the NME Awards in February just gone. The 1975 headlined it, and yeah, it was quite an exciting night, as you can see. Yeah, it's also the live element of what I do is only part of it. Portrait is a massive part of what I do as well. And as I said, they might be for magazine covers or for features, or it might be directly for the artist for them to use in sort of album artwork or promotion for an album campaign or for social media content. Sometimes it can be quite raw stuff, like this, just sort of this little peep shot from outside Buckingham Palace. Sometimes it can be very sort of raw street style stuff, just with minimal lighting and fuss. Sometimes they might be more elaborate affairs in the studio with lots of lighting and a smoke machine in full flow. Like this shot here was with a band called Creeper for a Kerrang cover at the start of the year, unveiling their sort of new look. And of course, no music photographer spends too long in the game without spending a good portion of their summer at festivals. Again, that might be for websites or magazines, or you might end up being part of the sort of official photography team, and that can get you some amazing access. Like this shot here was at Glastonbury a few years ago, and I managed to get a slot in one of the cherry pickers that goes up above the Arcadia part of the site, and gave me this mad viewpoint.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned that you get quite nervous, because I would have thought that would happen maybe early on in your career or when you were at college, but that might have gone by now. But do you still find that you get nervous before these shoots?
It's not quite the absolute crushing anxiety that I used to have, but I think there's definitely an element of it's almost like performance sort of anxiety. It's a To be honest, I'd almost get worried if I wasn't getting slightly anxious before shoots, because it means you don't care enough about it.
Yeah, or you're too comfortable.
yeah, you're possibly being complacent. I'm always looking to push myself forwards and stuff. So I think that sort of nervous energy can be a good thing, so long as you can harness it and not let it sort of get in the way of what you're trying to do. Also, as well as a lot of the magazine and sort of record label stuff I do, there are quite a few weird and wonderful commercial commissions you end up doing. This was one of the stranger ones a couple of years ago when the Guitar Hero game launched their live version. They got these big mad festivals with audiences full of extras and stuff, and they had me there as a unit photographer, shooting them as I would like a normal festival. But these were all images that went into like the in-game menus, and I'm actually in a lot of the gameplay as a character if you've ever played it. And yeah, one of the best brand ones I got to do was I spent a little bit of time working with Converse on this rubber track project they did, where they used to book out big slots of recording studio time and invite up and coming artists in to do that. And yeah, I basically got to spend a few weeks at these studios shooting these artists coming in. But we did a 2-week residency at Abbey Road, which was pretty amazing. And sometimes it might just be sort of branded events where you're basically paying to produce content kind of in the style that you would normally, but just making sure those all important logos are visible, and those logos and products can make a big difference to the resulting paycheck as well.
It's so mind-blowing to see all the different things that you do. It's like one week is not the same. When you think of a music photographer, you might necessarily think that you're on the stage all the time taking pictures of concerts, but it's not that at all, is it?
I mean, that's obviously part of it, but when people think music photography, they think that sort of key moment on there, but obviously there's a lot of other various aspects to it. Yeah. If we rewind things right back to the beginning of all this, go back to, I think it's probably 2007 when I actually got my sort of first proper camera. So yeah, I was a chef living in Cornwall, and basically just obsessed with surfing. And growing up, being massively into surfing and skateboarding, you're surrounded by a lot of photography. They're very visual cultures.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it. This shot here is one of the first ever rolls of film that I photographed at a little show in Plymouth. But prior to that, surfing was what got me into photography. Like I say, I was working in Cornwall, and after one long summer, I booked a trip to go to Southwest France and have a little bit of money left over. So got myself a camera just to get some nice wave photos to annoy my friends with, really. And then, a few days.
Do you remember what camera it was?
I think it was a weird little Fuji bridge camera. It's about the best I could afford with the very limited funds I had at the time. But and I noticed I was starting to skip evening surfs to take photos on the beach of people surfing. I was like, maybe there's a little bit of love for this photography stuff in me. And when I got back from that trip, the camera started coming on all my surf missions up and down the coast. I started to take photos of the landscape and stuff like that, and it really sort of spiraled out of control from there. Like I said, surfing was really my first focus. And after a few years, I managed to start getting a few things published in surfing magazines and stuff. But with photography, you find that whatever you're interested in, you end up pointing the camera at it. And as well as surfing, I was very into sort of punk and hardcore music.
Yeah.
And Southwest, where I was living, had quite a vibrant, weird little underground scene. So, initially I just took a camera along to one of these shows, they were quite wild affairs. So I wanted to try and get a photo that sort of just on my wall at home that captured a little bit of that energy. And very quickly I got quite addicted to these were the kind of things that were going on. So I got quite addicted to that energy and trying to capture that in frames, and became this thing of shooting a lot of these shows and just trying to figure things out, how I could make things better, whether that was the equipment I was using, how I was processing images, like the access I was getting. And it's, you know, doing this, I started to meet people in the bands, people who were putting the shows on, people who worked at venues. Just, it was the early stages of starting to build that like all important network, which is really key into sort of finding your way through into the music industry.
It's quite interesting that you say that you started taking your camera along to things that you enjoyed doing at the time, because I'm sure a lot of people who want to get into photography maybe get their camera and then have no idea what they should start taking photographs of.
Yeah.
So would you suggest people, if they want to get into photography, to maybe just take it along with you on your day when you're doing things that you enjoy, and then you'll find kind of your rhythm with it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I do think that whatever you're passionate about in life is where your best work will come from. 5 years prior to this sort of shot, I was the kid doing that, you know. So I think if you understand a culture and a subculture, and you've got that passion for it, you understand that energy, and I think that is always where your best work will come from, the things you're passionate about.
And how did you go from focusing on one genre of music specifically to begin with to exploring all sorts of different genres?
Around about this time, I sort of decided, I felt like there might be something possibly happening with the music photography. So I sort of went all in and signed up and started to study at the art college.
Mm-hmm.
I began to push myself, sort of starting to learn how to take portraits and things like that. But it was, probably the bit, like the key sort of 0 to 100 moment was in 2011. I entered some of my punk stuff into the NME Photography Awards and managed to win it with this live shot here. And at the sort of the little exhibition awards opening thing, I met the photo editor of the NME. We got talking to her, and she said that she really liked the work I submitted, and asked me if I wanted to come into the office to show her some other work. So I was, on one hand, obviously really excited, but also a little bit nerve-wracking because, at the time I only had some sort of like inkjetted zines and bits and pieces. But I went into the office, and she fortunately saw something in what I showed her, and asked me if I'd be interested in shooting for them, and I said yes, please. And like slowly, I started to get odd bits and pieces through from that. But that was definitely that real key thing. So I guess it was spending a few years quite obsessively shooting this punk and hardcore work. So, and then getting in front of the right person who saw something in it. That was like really how I transitioned from just these little shows into the bigger music industry, really.
If you cast your mind back, when you went to send that picture to the competition, was there any doubt in you? You thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, or it's not going to be good enough? Was there any self-doubt that crept in? And how did you overcome that? If you
I had an element of confidence in it because it was quite different to a lot of the music photography that I was seeing. Quite often it was quite clean, sort of, nice venue stuff, where I felt this had like a real rawness to it, which I don't know, people would either love it or hate it, So, but I think the worst thing in music photography is for it to be boring. It should be, you should always have something that expresses that feeling of what it was like being there. But there's definitely an element of that imposter syndrome, especially when you going from quite an underground scene like that into quite a big mainstream world. It was, I did definitely feel like I was riding by the seat of my pants for a while. I was also very aware that those kind of opportunities, there's the sort of thing that only come around a few times in a career, so you have to sort of grab them and just ride them out and do what you can.
And if we talk about your experience of Plymouth College of Arts, how did you decide to go to that particular college, and what was that experience like? How did it help you?
It was interesting. I mean, obviously education isn't for everyone, but I was at a bit of a crossroads. Like I say, I'd been working as a chef for maybe most of my 20s, and it was something I'd sort of fallen into that allowed me to travel a lot and go live somewhere where I could go surfing a lot. But I had this things have been happening with photography that made me think maybe there was something there. I just wanted to go all in and just, you know, see what I could do with it if I really committed. And I felt like studying it was the best way to really immerse myself in that. I looked at a few places. But yeah, I went to the art college. You know, they had really good facilities there, but also it's quite a unique thing because everyone who studies there is studying something creative. So it's a really good environment. There's a lot of, you know, cross-pollination between people, and you develop a lot of appreciation for other art forms, you know, like painting and like filmmaking and stuff like that. That still feeds into my work these days. And it's just when you're in a creative environment like that, it makes you want to, you know, do whatever it is you do to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And creative people, if you hang around with them, they tend to inspire you as well, don't they? So
yeah, there's sort of energy about it.
Cool. Do you want to share some more of your photographs?
Indeed. So yeah. So this is just moving into some of my sort of early sort of magazine commissions I was starting to get. My thing going to festivals and things like that, I always wanted to try and get something that wasn't just your standard sort of safe shot. I was always looking for a unique angle, and you know, this one I was a little bit further back from everyone, and it actually worked to my advantage. But I think, yeah, you'll see in a lot of my photographs, I think possibly it comes from shooting surfing and stuff when I was younger. I was always, you know, I had an eye for action, and that like key moment in the images, you know, like, you know, half a second either side of that, it wouldn't have been as good a shot. It was, for me, it was often always about finding that like real key dynamic moment in there.
Trying to capture a photo like that one, how many times would you attempt that? Would it have been a case of taking like 20 different pictures and then getting the right one, or would you have just timed it perfectly?
Obviously, cameras these days, they take a fair few frames in a row, but interestingly, with that shot, maybe a week or so before another festival, I missed a similar shot, and it was like really burnt me. So when I saw that something similar was happening, I was like, right, this time I'm gonna make sure I nail it.
The fail inspired you to get it next time.
Yeah. There's things from like years ago that I still remember, like photos that I missed, or, you know, just you weren't quick enough or you didn't anticipate it. This was from a commission where I realized like some of the quite exciting perks of working in the music magazines and stuff like this. This was I remember getting the email for this and just being like not believing it for about 20 minutes. They basically asked me what I was doing next Wednesday and asked if I wanted to go to South Africa with a band called Bring Me the Horizon. They're playing a few festivals out there, so I flew out to this On the Road feature with them. And yeah, it's just that I still remember that feeling of getting on a plane to fly to South Africa, and like, wow, someone is paying me to do this. It's quite insane.
That was quite early on as well, so that must have really been a mind-blowing experience.
Yeah, I was still at the art college studying when it happened. So yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember having to tell my lecturers that I wasn't going to be in for a few days. Yeah, it was really surreal. And then it was, yeah, I remember coming back from it, and at the time I was still having to work evenings at the post office just to keep cash flowing. So yeah, I got back at about 3 p.m. from the flight from the airport, and yeah, about 3 hours later I was back at my normal job. It was quite a surreal one for sure.
That's quite a frank but also reassuring thing to tell the audience, is that you might start out here, but you're not going to be making big bucks straight away. You've got to maybe have a part-time job, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's a real you have to have a bit of a leap of faith moment, but I think, yeah, it's sensible to build up to that moment, you know, have something else going on that while you sort of build these things. And it's, you know, I think it's important for people to be honest about it as well. You know, not, you know, it's a struggle getting to that point, and there does come a point where you're like, right, am I going to commit to this or not? And also, it's quite an unpredictable way of making a living. You know, even now, sometimes you have months where you're like, wow, I'm killing it, and then you might have a couple of weeks when it's really quiet. It's definitely not for everyone.
anywhere there's a global pandemic.
that definitely caused a few change of plans this summer. But yeah, even when it's business as usual, there's it can be an unpredictable thing, which it isn't for everyone, you know. But if I just go, yeah. So coming on to that sort of leap of faith moment, this image here is quite a key one for me because, yeah, like I said, I've been trying to get time off to do these commissions, and eventually it got to the point where they were like, "Oh, you can't have the time off to do." So yeah, an email came through asking if I wanted to go to Europe with Biffy Clyro. I was like, "Wow, yeah." Yeah. And then went into work, and they're like, "Oh, you can't. I'm afraid you can't have the time off." So I thought about it for about 20 seconds and went back to my desk and wrote out my notice, and went and did the magazine trip, and yeah, been managing to make things roll from there. But yeah, this one, I remember taking this shot and definitely feeling like I'd made the right decision.
That looks absolutely amazing, and it looks as though you get a lot of behind the scenes kind of access. Would you say that? And what would you say about behind the scenes?
Yeah,
of like festival concerts.
Yeah, you definitely get some very sort of money can't buy experiences, and get to see, find yourself in some really privileged and surreal situations. You get to have like that feeling of what it's like for a band standing on these massive festival stages, and through your images you're able to share that, and it can be not quite nerve-wracking as well. I remember the first few times I was on that big stages like that, I was always terrified that I was going to knock something over or kick a wire out of something and all the lights would go off. But yeah, fortunately I've never had any clangers like that.
Touch wood. There's still time.
But that access and those experiences are a big part of why you do it. If you're a music fan, to get to be close to the sort of creative processes of these artists and the energy of these like massive shows, it's a real privilege.
Yeah, the energy that you spoke about from the early stages of your career and going to something like that, the adrenaline must just be crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange duality, because on one hand you're thinking, oh wow, this is an amazing thing, but you're also very sort of focused on getting the shot that you want to get as well. So yeah, it's not always, you're not just standing there enjoying the music thinking, oh, what a great view. You're usually thinking how you can get in front of some CO2 machine so you can get a clear shot and stuff like that. But I think when you have successful ones like this one, where you really sort of translate that, what it feels like to be there, I think that's always a really successful shot for me. Yeah, again, this probably goes back to what I was saying about finding those sort of key moments of energy. And I shot them like this to begin with because it was the only way I knew how to shoot, and I think that kind of worked in my favor, maybe, that I was shooting bigger shows in a way that I shot punk rock shows, but it gave my work possibly a slightly different aesthetic and feeling to people who are more used to shooting big shows,
Yeah, and was a lot of the early work that you've done, did you learn, was it a lot of self-taught stuff? Like you tried a certain shot, you reviewed it, you kind of thought actually no or yes? Was it like that?
I think it was a bit of a trial and error thing. It was a lot. It was shooting a lot of shows and then going back to those, sitting with those shots and being like, right, what works here, what doesn't work, what's wrong with it? Is it to do with my knowledge of the camera, or the shutter speed? Is it to do with the equipment I'm using? Is it the lenses? Is it the access I'm getting? Because I was shooting a lot of these shows in the same venues, it allowed me to sort of figure out the best places to stand, and it was I think you definitely need to spend a good 2 or 3 years just shooting a lot of shows and just really sitting with those images and being your own harshest critic and figuring out how they can be better, and you need to sort of hold yourself up to the standards of people you want to emulate, because eventually you're going to be competing against them for the same jobs. So yeah, I think
you have to find your own creative flair, your personal thing that makes you a different photographer than anyone else?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about finding that thing that you do better than other people and really maximizing that. But also at the same time, not limiting yourself. You need to be diverse. But I think for everyone, they've got, there's everyone has their own personal way that they see things. You can't teach that. So it's about seeing it first and then being like, all right, how do I get my skill with the camera to that point where I can, I can represent what I see well through the camera. I was quite lucky that they gave, if there was a show that was likely to get quite wild and leery, they knew that I'd get stuck in. So it's a bit of a rod for my own back. I used to get sent to a lot of the raucous shows. It was, I think maybe about 4 seconds after I took this frame, I actually took it as I was falling over. So 5 seconds later, I was on top of those people in the foreground.
Have you ever had any like equipment break or anything during these particularly rowdy places?
Oh, like touch every bit of wood around, but I haven't had anything too bad. I've had a couple of flash guns have been destroyed, but for the most part, not too bad. I think, like I say, because years ago, I used to be the kid at that punk and hardcore show. I used to almost develop a bit of a sixth sense, like a spatial awareness about what's going on around you. So you almost, clock out the corner of your eye, someone's about to stage dive over you or something.
You're aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, you definitely need to be better. It's a health and safety nightmare. What can I tell you? But you definitely need to be aware when you're in these sort of things. There's not always a nice, comfy photo kit for you to stand in. Next step in conquering fear is so dramatic. Yeah, I guess we've talked a lot about live stuff, but I was saying portraiture is a big part of what I do as well, and I was always very aware that it was something that I found slightly terrifying. So and I knew that if I wanted to progress in my career and be shooting covers and stuff like that, I needed to get on top of it. So I really forced myself to sort of learn a lot more about lighting and push myself when I had the opportunities to take portraits, try and elevate them and make something really good. And I think this Mark Ronson shot here, I remember it was like one of the first portraits I'd taken. I was like, wow, like I almost couldn't believe I'd taken it, because it was never something I thought I'd be particularly strong at. But because I found it terrifying, I sort of forced myself to keep doing it and face it until it wasn't an issue anymore. And now it's probably one of the things I enjoy most in photography.
That picture is absolutely brilliant. I'm really intrigued to know about, in terms of the lighting and stuff, and how you built those skills up. What did you actually do to make sure that you were more comfortable, and how did you grow that skill?
I think it's obviously practicing, and just shooting your friends and your unwilling girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. It's just practicing so that when you get in front of these people, you're the technical thing isn't something you're worried about. If you can concentrate on creating a photograph like this. I was also looking at look at lots of photography, especially these days. There's a lot of photographers that are often posting behind the scenes photos. So I was always looking to see like how people have lit things. Just looking at the light and the shadow and trying to figure out how these things look like that. And often, it's not always, once you start doing it, it's a lot less scary than you think it's going to be. So yeah, it's definitely confronting that fear and just keep repeating it until it's not an issue anymore, really.
When you meet these huge stars and you're asked to shoot them, like this picture here, do you ever have to kind of disassociate yourself from who you're trying to capture the picture of? Do you ever pretend it's someone else, or is that not an element of your concern?
It's definitely a strange one, but I think when you go into these things, sometimes you've only got 20 minutes, or you can't. Sometimes you've got a couple of minutes to get a shot. So you're always so focused on what you need to do that you're not really thinking too much about who these people are and stuff like that. And also, once you've met a few people, you kind of find that for the most part they're just they're fairly they just want to be treated like everyone else.
They're just people.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you like fanboy it a bit too hard, then it can make them feel a little weird, and it also makes you look a little bit unprofessional. They need to feel confident that you know what you're doing, and you're going to do a good job, and it's worth their time, and you're going to make them look good. But I would, it definitely hasn't always been easy. But what I did used to do, and sometimes still do, is I might have a look at what they, do a little bit of research about the person, where they've just been on tour, what they've done, if there's, and any sort of point of reference, whether it's a football team or an artist they like, just finding a few bits of conversation that you can, just get that sort of thing, just get people comfortable and things flowing is a good way.
Yeah, so keep it friendly but keep it professional. I mean, I've even been told before that if you meet a star and you say like, "Oh, can I have a picture with you?" You're kind of putting yourself in a fan category rather than on par with them. So is that something you would suggest as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some people do get photos with people when they work with them. Like personally, it's not something I've ever done, but yeah, I think you're right. It does. Yeah, it puts a weird dynamic into the thing. Whereas I like to treat them as like a normal person and just make them feel confident that I'm going to do a good job with them.
Yeah, essentially they're your client, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. What we got here? Like I was saying about just taking every opportunity I could to elevate things. So this was Dua Lipa when she was. It was the summer she was just starting to break really big, and I had maybe like a 4 or 5 minute slot with her literally just before she went on stage at Glastonbury, and I talked to one of my colleagues who was working there with me to come along and hold a light for me, just so I could get a shot that was elevated slightly above like a normal stand against the porta cabin sort of situation you have at a festival. And it worked really well because she came out looking absolutely flawless, and I like that weird juxtaposition of her and this like pretty grubby backstage area.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love all the colours in that as well. They look so vibrant.
Yeah, it worked well as a composition. But yeah, I remember when I first went back there, there's just mud everywhere, and yeah, she may have been looking flawless, but I've been on site for like 2 days already, so I was safe.
Have you ever had any of these singers ever like repost your pictures or feedback to you and say, "Oh my God, Andy, I love this one that you've captured"? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, sometimes they'll repost things or ask if they can see some of the shots, and it's always a really nice compliment when they do put things out into the world. And sometimes you might shoot things for a magazine. So the Mark Ronson shot we were looking at a moment ago, that was originally for the NME, but his press person was at the shoot, really liked the look of what I'd done and asked to see them, and then Sony then bought those shots from me to use for worldwide press, which is always like a really it's a massive compliment, and it helps build your confidence that you're doing something right. What else is there? More making the most of opportunities and bringing. I use a lot of battery flash packs, which allow you to create sort of studio lighting on location. Which it's probably my favorite thing to do is find cool locations and light them well, and always look for that slightly different angle. Make things look cool,
In terms of someone getting into photography and they might be thinking, "Oh, I haven't got loads of money to start buying all this equipment. I can't afford these lights." What would you say in that situation?
Well, to be honest, it's something you build up over time. Like when I was still working a part-time job, any photography work I did have, I used to just use that to reinvest into camera equipment. But you don't necessarily. I mean, this image here was obviously my normal camera, one of my lenses, but it was just a single light, which they don't always have to be super technical, and you can do a lot with just natural light. or very basic lighting. But yeah, but then it's not always about the gear. But then you will find yourself limited by what you're using. But yeah, you don't need thousands of pounds worth of equipment to take good photos for sure. I mean, here is a good example. Is this photo of Brendan Urie was literally just shot with a normal speed light, which is a couple of £100 on a weird little flash bracket. Ironically, it was photographed against the side wall of a really expensive studio that his label had booked out for the press day. And I had a load of my my expensive lighting in the corner for another setup. The shot I actually liked was the one that I shot on this really simple flash bracket setup. And then as you eventually you can get to that sort of stage where you really you can sort of pre-visualize an idea, and it's really rewarding when you can go into a place and actually get something looking like you had it in your mind.
And in terms of like the magazines that you've worked for and things, do they supply you the equipment? Do they supply the studio, or do you need to organise that yourself?
It can be different scenarios for different clients. I mean, back in the day, the NME used to have an account that you could use for hiring, or like often if it's a press day, a label will sort of book out a studio for a day, and all the various magazines will come and shoot them there. So you can use that kind of stuff there. For a while, before I could afford my own lighting, I did if it was a big shoot, I used to just use some of my own money to hire out lighting for the day, just to make sure that those shots looked really good. It's a bit of a speculate to accumulate thing. If you spend a bit of your own money to make something amazing, they then trust you with a bigger budget shoot.
Yeah, essentially it's like building your portfolio, isn't it? So you need to have the good work there to prove that you're worthy of other shoots in the future.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in front of someone like Brendan Urie or something, it's worth spending that £50-60 on an extra bit of lighting to make sure that the shot, those shots can be like really pivotal things. So it's definitely early on. It can be worth taking a little bit less profit but to make sure that the shots look amazing. And interestingly as well, this may look like a nice studio. This was actually in the upstairs of a reptile rescue centre up in Leeds.
Really?
Yeah. Well, to the side there are all these big boxes of snakes that they had for us to use, and I just set up a material background in the middle of it all.
Good.
Right. What else we got? So
health and safety.
Sorry.
I said, obviously, shooting with an exotic animal, health and safety would have been quite crucial there.
Well, yeah, we did have the people from the reptile centre on hand, but yeah, I think the concept had come from the band. So I said to Larissa, the singer, when she turned up, I was like, "Oh, so have you handled a lot of snakes before?" No. She smashed it, so it was all good. But yeah, I was just going to say, some of these frames, I just wanted to show, like, going on from what I was just saying, the reality of what you're dealing with sometimes. So often people think you're always working in a glamorous studio with like 5 assistants bringing you chilled glasses of cranberry juice and stuff, but quite often you're working with locations or in dressing rooms. This particular one was a Kerrang cover that I did with a band called Neck Deep. We did it at the singer Ben's house, and it turned out it was raining, and the only place we had enough space to set up the lights was in his garage. So amazingly, that shot that you can see on the cover was shot amongst all the clutter of his garage. And this one
that says a lot about your skills you can have.
Yeah,
sorry,
definitely.
There's a bit of a lag, isn't there? But I was going to say that in terms of your skills, it says a lot about you if you're able to make those shots in the likes of a reptile centre or a garage, and they still come out looking amazing. It says a lot about your skill set.
Yeah, I think working as an editorial or music photographer, I think you need to be really adaptable and flexible, and just think sometimes you're in a bit of a nightmare scenario and you have to like think on your feet about what you can do to make it happen, and you bring the things that you think you might need to enable you to make that happen. But for example, this shot that's on here, I've just taken a couple of battery powered lights with me, and we've met Matt the singer in near Paddington to do the interview, and then they were just like, oh, can you find somewhere nearby to do the photos? And I just couldn't find anything, and eventually went down this side street and there was a black wall on the side of a pub. So I just set up a single light there, got him to stand near to the wall, and just shot it in this really moody way. And I love the shot, but we're just on a side street in London, on the pavement there.
That looks like it's shot in a studio. That's crazy that was taken on the side of the pub.
Yeah.
In terms of the realities as well, have you ever had anyone that you've gone to take a picture of and they've been maybe not very easy to work with? Have you ever come across that? And if that has been the case, how did you overcome that and still get what you needed to do from that project?
Well, it's often when you're doing shoots, it might be before someone's going to play a show, so obviously their mind is on the show, or they might be on a day off on tour and they're tired, they've been on the road for weeks, and the last thing they want to do is have you point the camera at it. And I think it's about being able to judge the situation. Sometimes you go in and try and create a good vibe and get things flowing. Sometimes you can clock they're just like, right, let's just get this done as quickly as possible. And in that sort of case, you need to shut up and really just power through. Interestingly, you should say that if we go to this shot here, so this was a Kerrang cover with Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age, and I'd flown out to Switzerland to do it. I was quite excited to do it. He's a very cool guy, and I was hoping to get some really cool shots. I got to the venue, and there's already a bit of a bad vibe in the, he's really ill, and there's already talk that potentially the shoot might not even happen at all. So I'm like, oh man. And basically the magazine has wanted this quite a dingy sort of moody bar vibe, almost like you were having a late night drink with him. And the venue was really, really modern and clean. I was running around trying to find somewhere to do it with the panic rising. And eventually I found this Nespresso bar upstairs and cleaned out all the coffee bits and set up some lights to make it look quite moody. Eventually it came through that he was going to give me maybe 8 or 10 minutes or so to get it done. So I had all the lights set up, ready to go. I knew where I wanted him to be, so just brought him in. He did his thing, looked cool for about 6-7 minutes, and that Kerrang, that cover was in the bag. But it was definitely one of those situations where I was like, right, he doesn't want to be here, so just make.
He was probably in the right mood for that particular shoot, then, isn't he? It was a mood.
Like I say, fortunately, he's a cool guy, and he does the moody look well, so it fits the vibe for this one. But at the time, I was definitely, I knew that it was potentially I was going to have very limited time to do it. So I was like, right, I need to be prepped and ready to go. Just get as much out of this as I can while he's get what he's got to give me.
I guess that you've probably also got to have quite a tough skin in those situations, because you could take that personally, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think it can, especially guys like Josh Homme, they're big dudes, quite high profile and stuff, and these guys are proper sort of rock and roll outlaws, some of them. So it's easy to be quite rattled by it. So I think you have to sort of go in, ready for whatever. And sometimes I might, if I've got a friend who I know has photographed someone that I'm going to photograph, I might chat to them and be like, oh, how were they? What do they like? What do they not like? You might do things like, sometimes I'll make playlists for shoots just to have some music on in the room, so it's a bit less of an awkward sort of vibe. Just do whatever you can to make them feel comfortable, because they're musicians, they're not models, they don't necessarily like having their photos taken. So you just got to do whatever you can to make it painless and enjoyable, and just it's about, you know, if you go into it and you're not confident or you're feeling awkward, then the energy in that room is going to be awkward and the shots are going to look weird. A thing I always do is when I first meet the artist, I try and just run them through what my idea for the shoot is, what I want it to look like, and, you know, they try and get them on board with it, sell them the idea, and also if they're not into it, then try and, you know, collaborate with them to find something they do want to do. Because, you know, I respect that they want to be in charge of their image, and, you know, if you're making someone do something they don't feel comfortable doing, the shots are going to look rubbish. You know, it's going to be very obvious in the shots that they're not into it. So.
Obviously, you mentioned earlier doing some research first on the person that you're going to photograph, so you've kind of got that link of something in common, whether that's a football team or whatever. So that probably helps kind of as an icebreaker as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, if we go, this shot here is Kevin Smith. He's like a director and actor, and like this. So this is taken on what quite often with Hollywood stuff. It will be, you know, it's like a press junket. So basically, they have a hotel room for the day, and all these press, you know, they have a half-hour slot. They come in, do the interviews and photos and stuff. So you're like, right, how am I going to get something different and, you know, get something that he's going to be into? So again, I took a piece of material into the hotel room, clipped it up. They did the interview, and I think I had about 6 minutes afterwards. But yeah, one of my friends had a Kevin Smith action figure, which I managed to get hold of, brought it in, and obviously he found it quite a funny thing. So it was, you know, I gave him something to interact with and play with, and you bring the energy into the room, and, you know, give them something to work with, and often they'll give you something back, you know.
Yeah, and make them feel like they've got some kind of creative control. They're not just being bossed around, told what to do.
Yeah, totally. And also, I think they, like, bands and artists and stuff like that, they appreciate if you put some thought into what you're doing, rather than just being like, right, stand against that wall, you know. I think, yeah, if they feel like you're just going through the motions, then they're like, why am I giving up my time to do this? Oh, this one, I was just going to say, a thing I'm always trying to do is, you know, at these big festivals, you might find yourself in a photo pit with about 20 or 30 other photographers, like all of whom are going to be shooting on similar cameras and lenses to you. So it's like, right, you have to think, how am I going to get something that is different to what everyone else's photos are going to look like? So, for example, here you can sort of see in the foreground that, you know, like 20 other photographers there all getting the kind of like the obvious safe shot of Matt on the end of a ramp. But I went round to the back of a ramp, got the highest angle I could, and sort of got this wide angle shot, so you get that feeling of what it's like for him to be on the end of the ramp in front of that massive festival crowd. And again, you know, when the shots come out, that's going to stand out against everyone else's quite tight man with a microphone shot, you know.
Now, Andy, we haven't got much time left, and we've got loads of questions coming in. Would you be happy to move on to Q&A?
Let's go for it.
Or is there any more advice you want to go on to before we do that?
I think we're good to go.
Top tip for a young aspiring photographer. You've given a lot throughout that session, but is there anything else that you think would be good?
The first thing is to, you know, get out there and start shooting. Wherever you are, there's going to be some sort of music scene. I mean, I was based in Cornwall when, you know, I started shooting music stuff. So you haven't really got any excuse, you know. So get out there and start shooting is the first thing to do, you know. And you need to spend, like I said, a couple of years just shooting lots of local shows, meeting people, and getting your work up to that good standard. You know, be a harsh critic. You know, think how you can improve what you're doing. One thing I would say, if you're, you know, coming through these days, is to try and be increasingly, you need to be multifaceted. So, you know, most digital cameras, digital SLRs shoot video these days, so it's definitely worth being able to make little video edits for social media, having some like understanding of design and stuff like that. Because especially if you wanted to work as a touring photographer, being able to shoot bits and pieces of video is like that. I know for some people that's been the, you know, whether it came down to whether they could do that or not, as to whether they got the job. So definitely now, you know, it's a function that's on your camera. So I think it's definitely worth having some understanding of video for sure. Yeah, just but yeah, building that network. But I think that comes quite organically. But just surround yourself with like positive people. Like build a little crew. Whether I've got some of my friends who are photographers. It's not about being competitive with them. It's about I help them on shoots, they help me, and find other people like stylists, hair and makeup people. Just find like driven, motivated people who want to shoot and collaborate, build little crews. That can make a big difference. If you're working with a band who's quite young, they might not be particularly fashionable. If you've got a friend who's into fashion or wants to be a stylist, they can stuff like that can really elevate your early shoot. And that high tide can it raises everyone.
Yeah, and you can inspire each other as well as helping each other as well.
Yeah.
We'll move on to another question. Hi Andy, big inspiration for me, so thanks for doing this. What would you say was the defining moment to launching your career?
I think it definitely has to go back to that NME Awards win. That definitely plucked me from shooting weird little hardcore shows in crazy little venues in the southwest, and sort of dumped me into about a year later, flying to South Africa, flying to Europe, working on these big festival stages. And like I say, it was a really exciting, if slightly terrifying experience. But like I said earlier, I knew it was only going to come round once. I couldn't say, oh, maybe give me a couple more years till I'm ready. You have to really grasp it, because there's going to be a big queue of people behind you who are happy to take it. Yes, and I think that just comes back to making sure you're visible. These days social media is a massive platform for that. Obviously Instagram, probably the main one as a photographer. So you could have taken the world's greatest music photo, but if it's just sat on your hard drive, then it's not going to get you anywhere. So once you feel like your work is getting strong and you're feeling more confident about it, make sure you're getting it out into the world, getting it in front of the right people, using all the hashtags, tagging venues and bands and labels and stuff like that. And like I say, competitions are still a big thing and a really useful way of getting yourself exposure and getting your work seen by the right people.
This is a really interesting question, this one. I'm wondering whether anyone else in the audience also feels the same. I enjoy photography, but I don't think my parents would ever agree to me going down that route. Do you have any tips to help me convince them to see the light?
My parents were supportive, if a little baffled by it all. It definitely took a good few years for them to actually believe like this was a thing, like this was a job you could do. So I think it's funny, like all the things I do, sometimes there's weird little things that like help them understand it. Like the 1975 shot that I had earlier in the talk, that ended up being used in the Sunday Times magazine as a double-page spread for a feature about them. And my mum was like, very excited, telling her friends who get the Sunday Times, oh no, pick that. But I think it's the best way to convince them is to prove that you're like really committed to it. Whatever you do, whether you want to be in a band or something, you've got to give it like 100%. And the stuff that is very competitive and there's no obvious route through it, you need to work way harder than if you want to do a slightly more normal job. A lot of people want to do this kind of thing, so you need to work harder than them. But I think it's prove to your parents that that you are totally committed to it, and show that you really want it. And like I say, I was shooting NME commissions, but I was also working like part time for a while until I felt like until that crunch point came and I needed to take that step forward. But be very proactive at it, and prove to them that and do your research. Show to them that you thought about how you understand the industry and you figured out what your route is going to be.
We'll go for one more question, and then Andy, if you're able to answer any later on, perhaps we can get that organised on social media or something. That'd be quite good.
Yep.
So this last one we're going to go for is: are you freelance or do you work for an agency?
So I am freelance, but I have a so I don't get paid a retainer by anyone, but obviously I have established relationships with like Kerrang. I'm on their roster as like one of their photographers, and I have a lot of repeat clients I have good relationships with. I do that, like my work generally comes from. But there's no yeah, it's a slightly precarious thing, but it's also, you know, I don't just work for Kerrang. You know, I do stuff for labels, various brands. I work with various creative agencies who create like social media content for bigger brands and stuff. So I think that's important as well, is not to totally put, you know, all your eggs in one basket. You know, especially in these sort of times. You know, photography is constantly evolving. So, you know, some print magazines will stop. You know, they can go under. You know, like photo editors and designers, like art directors can change, and all of a sudden they might have photographers that they like working with. So I think it's about spreading your net quite wide. And you know, same, I've had a lot of big things happen, like people I work with these days who have come from saying yes to just like weird little jobs that I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but yeah, fine, I'll do it. And then, you know, they might go on to work somewhere else, or, you know, so, you know, big clients, it's not, you know, you don't always get approached directly by these people. It might be someone you worked with previously at something else, then goes on. So it's, like I say, about building that network and building a good reputation and being easy to work with. Yeah, just being nice and, you know, submitting edits on time, being professional with emails, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, word of mouth goes a long way in this type of industry. So I definitely agree with that. And that brings us basically to the end of today's Learn Lounge, which has been a particularly brilliant one. Thank you so much, Andy, for all of your advice. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and we'll see you next time.